Let's begin with a drum set. Listen for an explosive live sound. The snare should be crisp and the cymbals should ring.
I admire you when my living has a limit of desire to keep it going. I'm just knowing that my time with you makes a difference. How I'm feeling when I vibe with you. They can't divide us two. We got a bond like 007, right? Even on Devil's Night, you show me what the heavens like. Go ahead and spread your light, though I can barely see. I know you're there with me, my personal therapy. Some days I wish I was more like you. Your certainty, your attitude. Keep doing what you're doing, I ain't mad at you. I'm just wishing that I had that too. Some days I wish I was more like you. Your certainty, your attitude. Keep doing what you're doing, I ain't mad at you. Just to know you, I'm glad I do. I want you to view yourself the way you see me. When you're feeling alone, I'll be your sanctuary, yeah. I want you to view yourself the way you see me. When you're feeling alone, I'll be your sanctuary. You inspire me, look at you crazy when you tell me you admire me. Not an example for anybody to try to be. We'll call you bluff, but I know you wouldn't lie to me. Just a surprise to me, we got a bond tight, no one can come between. I have respect for you, you have your love for me, and that's enough for me. All I need to get by, let me be the method to your Mary J. Blige. So many times I felt defeated, you always know the right thing to say for when I need it. I wanna do the same thing for you to keep it even. You can call me anytime, you don't ever need a reason. I'm right here with you, never could forget you. All the things that we've been through, everything we went through, hey, none of it was simple, but I'm right here with you. Some days I wish I was more like you. Your certainty, your attitude. Keep doing what you're doing, I ain't mad at you. I'm just wishing that I had that too. Some days I wish I was more like you. Your certainty, your attitude. Keep doing what you're doing, I ain't mad at you. Just to know you, I'm glad I do. I want you to view yourself the way you see me. When you're feeling alone, I'll be your sanctuary, yeah. I want you to view yourself the way you see me. When you're feeling alone, I'll be your sanctuary.
Rise and shine. Pour yourself a cup of coffee and tune in to Good Morning Aurora. News, weather, and really cool interviews. Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m.
Good afternoon, Aurora. Good afternoon, Aurora. Good afternoon, Aurora. The time is now 1 p.m. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wait a minute. Well, hold on a second. What's going on here? Good Morning Aurora was live this morning. I had my coffee, I had my scone and my donut, and I got my news. What is this? This is a special edition. We have friends here of Illinois joining forces, and we're going to get to that great information for you guys here momentarily. But we want to say a very big thank you to our friends of American Legion Post 84. Right across the way from us, we've got news about the American Legion Band that's going to be performing this weekend as well. All right, so we have great guests, as I mentioned. We have Claudia Germano, and we have Mr. Jim Dolan of Illinois joining forces with us. So among the things that we'll be talking about today are the community veteran peer supporters, but then also any information about Illinois joining forces that anyone can benefit from. But let's start with a little bit of a little more introduction. So I introduced you, Claudia, but give us a little bit about where you're from and your involvement.
I am a veteran. I served in the Army.
Go Army!
Go Army. And I guess it kind of starts there, and this is how I found Jim Dolan and Illinois joining forces. But I served in the United States Army Reserve for a little over 9 years as a military police officer. And I joined in Illinois, and I still live here in Illinois, Bartlett, Illinois. And I got out in 2004.
Okay.
And during my reserve time, I did 3 deployments because during that time, the MP Corps was really not so much. They had some downsizing on active duty, and that's when all those things happened, September 11th and everything like that.
Wow, okay.
So I did three deployments during that time, my last one being in Iraq, and came home in 2004. And went back to my civilian job, just like I had done in between each deployment. You know,
Right.
They call it. Sometimes that's harder than even being on active duty because you're serving on the weekends and you're serving on deployments. You're coming back, trying to get back integrated into the civilian world, coming back out. You know,
2 different cultures.
it's just a whole different game
Right.
that you're playing each time. And so when I finally got out though and got out of the service, I went back into my civilian job, trying to get back to normal. And things were a little bit beyond expectation, and there were some adjustment issues over the years. And fast forward to 2010, 15, and where we're at today, I realized there were some things I didn't deal with. And so now this past fall, I was looking back at my overarching journey with the military and coming back as a civilian, and I wanted to be able to give back to other veterans and help them navigate the system and the VA the way, I had learned so much since 2004. And I
Right.
wish I knew then what I know now. And I got an email from a friend of mine that pointed me in the direction of Jim Dolan. And they were looking for volunteers. And now I get to be a part of his organization, helping other veterans, in a way that I didn't get that help to help them navigate when they come home or get out of the military. So
How about that? Coming full
Yeah.
circle.
Yep. full
About
circle.
making other people benefit from the experiences that we already learned from. We kind of talked about that this morning.
Yep.
About being parents to our kids, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I've learned it already, but let me help you in your journey. Jim, yourself?
So I'm not a veteran. My dad served in World War II. He flew combat missions, or cargo missions rather, in the South Pacific. His brother, my namesake, James Augustus, Gus, was involved in the invasion of Normandy.
Wow.
And come to find out that neither one of them ever talked about it, right? The only glimpse that we got of my dad's service was when he passed away and we went through his green footlocker, and we got a chance to see the awards and the correspondence that he had with my mom while he was serving and so forth. And it's a theme that Claudia and I will tap into a little bit later about that footlocker. But it really gave me an appreciation for his service. I wish he had had the opportunity or felt able to talk more about it. And it's something that we're encouraging more and more veterans to do. And it was years later that I became involved with Illinois Joining Forces. I first started working with Illinois Joining Forces, which is a statewide public-private partnership specifically designed to help veterans, service members, and their families connect to services in the community that they need and deserve. That's basically our mission. And there's two pillars to what we're doing. We have the Care Coordination Center, and I'll do a little commercial here, Curtis, if you don't mind.
Oh, brother, this is your show. Go ahead, commercial it up.
Yeah, the commercial is this. If any veteran, family member, or service member in the state of Illinois needs assistance, they can call our toll-free number, which is 833-INFO, I-N-F-O, IJF, 833-INFO-IJF. The numeric on that is 463-6453. So 833-463-6453. And the Care Coordination Center's primary job is to listen to the veteran, whatever their needs might be. A lot of times it has nothing to do with military service or veteran status. Most of the time, in fact, it's everyday stuff: housing, employment, financial assistance, education. But it runs the gamut. And we don't discriminate. So it's all eras, all branches, all manner of discharge, service members, veterans and their families, caregivers, and survivors. So when we say all, it's all. And we don't necessarily have all of the resources at our fingertips, but our guys do a great job of digging up those resources, connecting the veteran and their families to those resources. Our second initiative is what we call our Veteran Support Community Initiative, where we're actually going out into the community and connecting with service organizations, whether they're nonprofits, whether they're military-centric or not, to make sure that we have and understand the resources that are available. Because we want to be able to make recommendations and referrals for veterans as close to home as possible. It doesn't make sense for somebody here in Aurora to be referred to Rockford or to Peoria. So we believe that services are best delivered closest to home. So we try and make sure that we can connect them. In fact, one of our partners is across the street, right? The American Legion. That's right. Mike Eckberg and his team do a phenomenal job. The representative from this area, Stephanie Kifowit, is on our board. We're connected to both food pantries here. And the only way that we can honestly give people good recommendations if we get to know the resources and the folks in the community. Right. So in an effort to make sure that we added additional layer of support, we began what we call the Veteran Community Support Initiative, or the Veteran Community Supporters. And that's how Claudia and I met. And when it comes to veterans, the best help comes from another veteran. I think that's always been the case. Right. It's based on the principle of peer support, of shared experiences. So we thought if we're going to have veterans or expect veterans to help other veterans, we wanted to give them an additional level of training so they had the confidence and the background to be able to really provide some good support. So Claudia volunteered. We had 9 veterans trained earlier this year, and we're in the business of, or in the process rather, of making the connections into the community so that when a veteran does need additional support, we're able to connect them to a veteran, community veteran peer supporter to allow them or assist them in getting a little bit further along down the road, whether it's helping set up a budget or just having a cup of coffee, just being there, but in a deliberate fashion to help that veteran move through whatever challenges they have, and then allow them to get on with their lives. So we really think that this is a model that we can take to other parts of the state, but we're thrilled that Claudia and the rest of the team are on board, and we look for good things to happen.
One of our listeners, Norma Peterson, is here. She says, "Thank you to all veterans. We honor and remember your sacrifice." And Mr. Eckberg and Stephanie Kifowit are the heart of Post Legion 84. We concur with that statement. Thank you very much, Norma. Now we could always be doing better, sure, but how does Illinois rank in veteran services? Just kind of from a 30,000-foot view, are we as good as other states?
I don't know that we're as well organized yet.
Okay.
Even though Illinois Joint Forces has been around since 2012, we're still a very, very small operation. Okay. We were formed by the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs and the Illinois Department of Military Affairs. We do not receive funding from the state. All of the funding that we receive comes from private donations or foundations.
Okay.
In fact, one of the foundations that we're grateful to is here in Aurora, the Dunham Foundation.
Oh, what a marvelous institution. Great
Yes,
foundation.
exactly. So we approached them a couple of years ago, actually in the height of COVID. So things got delayed because of COVID. As everybody knows, there were a lot of restrictions on travel and getting together. But eventually we were able to secure a grant from them that included the training for the peer supporters. And over the last year, we've been making connections into the community with the food pantries, with the American Legion next door, all of the folks that are part of the community. So to answer your question about Illinois, there are a lot of people serving veterans. Some of them have been doing it for a very long time on their own dime, right, with very little support. So Illinois Joining Forces is really designed to be able to be the backstop for the work that they're doing, to support them in the community and the efforts that they're putting forth. We have a saying that no one organization can do it all, but together we can do anything. And so the whole focus of Illinois Joining Forces, in addition to providing navigation services, is collaboration. How can we work together to create a seamless net so that no veteran or family member falls through the cracks? So I think we're doing a great job. There's more work to be done. And we do have other states that we're modeling some of our work after. But Illinois as a state has a lot of folks who are reaching out to veterans, and we partner with them, as many of them as we can.
Claudia, since joining the team, how have you found the experience? Are you geared up? I know that you're a motivated person. I can tell you're both here early, so.
I just don't want to get lost.
But what's it been like for yourself, given your story that you share with us, to be involved with Jim and the organization?
Well, I think for me, to Jim's point, I think in Illinois, when he talks about it needs to be organized better. I feel like for me, being part of IJF has helped me see that there are people out there that are trying to put things together so that for veterans, their services and benefits are easier to navigate when they get out. I feel really lucky to be a part of IJF at the time that I'm becoming involved, because I think with my journey, like I was saying, it came in bits and pieces. I think some of the services that I'm fully aware of now and that I get for myself now could have happened so much earlier. But there were obstacles in my way.
Right.
And it wasn't because the service wasn't there, and it wasn't because it wasn't available, but it was in so many different spots, all the way down to getting your education benefits. Well, everyone kind of understands their VA GI Bill for the most part, and the schools walk them through that. So there's that piece of it. But then there's, what if you need health care? What if you have a service-connected disability? Oh, there's also, I get tax exemption if I buy a home in Illinois. And then there's, you start to say, well, wait, there's all these different things that a veteran has benefits to, but it's not all in one place.
Right.
It's not all in one place.
Years later.
And it's really confusing. And, then there's the part, well, some of the veterans coming back, they get out, and like me, when I got out, I didn't want anything to do with the military anymore. I didn't want to walk into a VA. I didn't want to do anything that was associated with the VA. And I think because, for soldiers that come out that have had certain experiences in the military, one of the things they do is they avoid anything that reminds them of anything that may have been traumatic or a reminder. They're just trying to get back to normal. Right. They just want to be normal again. And it depends on veterans. All veterans have different experiences for different reasons, different deployments, different circumstances. So I think there's a population of veterans out there that really, the ones that need the services the most are actually sometimes the ones that avoid stepping into a VA or to get that help. And I think what Illinois Joining Forces is doing is they're taking this more, it's not connected to the VA, and he was talking about the community veteran peer supporter role. It's like I'm a battle buddy again. Right. I'm not working for the government. I'm not working for the VA. I'm just a veteran. Right. That has had experience navigating some of these benefits, And now hopefully I can be a resource and point another veteran in the right direction faster for what they need right now. And then maybe put them on a roadmap to kind of get services in the future too that they weren't aware of. You know, the VA doesn't advertise their benefits.
Right.
You know,
the website is so terrible.
and I
mean, I'll say that my words. So the website needs to. I mean, come on, guys.
I mean, one of the things that helped me early on was that my dad served during Vietnam. He wasn't in Vietnam, but he served during that time, and he was the very person that was the first step in getting me help at a time that I needed it. And, you know, we talk about it all the time at IJF, is that it really takes sometimes extended friends and family to get veterans started on their road to help or benefits or whatever it is that they need, adjustment when they come home. And so my dad was my first step in that. And then over time, I was really fortunate and blessed to run across advocates and other VSOs that at that time were really, really key in me getting some of the services I needed that I wasn't aware of, or it was because I didn't know how to write up the claim the correct way,
Right.
or, you know, there's just so many moving parts to this. And so for me, I feel like I hopefully can give that back to other veterans now. And IJF, I don't have all the answers myself, but as a, you know, as a battle buddy or community veteran peer supporter, now I can fall under this organization that has tremendous resources, navigation tools, and partnerships that just really make this very synergistic in helping other veterans. So
That's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I the only thing I would add, thank you, by the way, that
sure.
what Claudia is identifying is real. There's no question about that, especially for somebody who's struggling, whether it's the VA website or anyone else's website. It's one of the reasons that our Care Coordination Center is set up to provide what we call high-touch holistic resource navigation. And one of the things that we see is a lot of organizations will just point to another website, or they'll give people a phone number, right? And what we found was that when people are struggling, when they're in need, that's not the time for them to be tasked with doing research.
Right.
They want someone who can help navigate. So Michael Smith does a great job. He's been with us for 7 years. He's out in the community, is on the phones. He's the one that is the tip of the spear for Illinois Joining Forces. And what happens is really, it's almost instantaneous. Not all the time, but when it happens, you can see it. A veteran will come in and they'll know that because Mike is a veteran, and he'll do what we call an intake, right? And he'll ask for military information, make sure we have a DD-214 so that we can use that to help him or her get the services they need. But they really unload, right? Very rarely does somebody come to us with a single need. So we'll see 2 and 3 needs. And once they unload that, so to speak, once they give that to Mike, they know that Mike's going to triage it. He's going to take care of the most urgent matters first. And while that person is being sent to get that issue addressed, it could be for housing or emergency assistance or what have you, Mike's working on the other ones, right? So the veteran doesn't have to bounce around. It's not easy for veterans, it's not easy for any of us to ask for help. But anyone in the community, any veteran who would want additional assistance through our Veteran Community Peer Supporter Program, they can reach out to us at our toll-free number, 833-INFO-IJF.
That's right.
833-INFO-IJF, to be able to allow us to plug them into one of the veterans that's on our team, right? So we have Vietnam veterans, we have obviously Claudia as a female Army veteran, we have Marine female and male veterans, and we want to make sure that that camaraderie, that peer support, and that connection is done. And it doesn't have to be a long process, right? A lot of people just need a little bit of a lift, a little bit of camaraderie, and that connection, and they're well on their way. The other thing that you mentioned that was interesting, we really have learned that, and we partner with the VA quite a bit. There's a lot of things that they do, which is one of the reasons their website can be confusing, because they do so much. They're a huge bureaucracy. But when I'm out in the community, I'll often quote Lincoln from his second inaugural, where he said that we are to bind up the nation's wounds. We are to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan. And I don't believe at the time that Lincoln said those words that he was thinking about the VA or any federal bureaucracy.
Right.
He was talking to every citizen in every state around the country that it's our responsibility as citizens to care for him who shall have borne the battle, for his widow and his orphan. And we've kind of lost that ethos. You were talking earlier about the junior ROTC and how there's a movement in some areas to push that out of the high schools. We think it should be pushed back in.
Right.
We think that ethos of service serves our entire country because it creates citizens, right? And so part of what we've done is not only work with the VA, but we've also gone out to community providers, right? You mentioned the food pantries. There's actually two, right? Marie Wilkinson's
and the Aurora Area Interfaith.
The Interfaith, we've worked with them both. And so those organizations have nothing to do with the military, but each has had events for the military. The Veterans Gardening Day was just about a month ago, where Director Prince from the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs spoke. We sponsored last year's Memorial Day food drive through a grant from our good partners at Bob Woodruff Foundation. Those are organizations that aren't military or veteran-centric. They're not funded by the VA.
Right.
They're community-based. We reach out to faith-based organizations and other organizations that can provide services. And I'll tell you, Curtis, in a lot of ways, some of the community providers have a lower barrier to entry than do some of the veterans organizations, because they don't care if you've served. Right. They don't care how you were discharged. All they care about is, are you a member of our community and are you in need? And they step up to meet the need. So it's an all hands on deck approach.
Right. And to the point about the VA, I mean, the VA did do great work when the pandemic started, like with telehealth, for example. So, folks were still able to get a level of care and be helped. But to the point that we're also making, again, if you live in Aurora, you don't have time to go to Maywood or wherever the case may be. So that local battle buddy, that local person who knows and they can understand, that's key for a lot of people. I have you were kind enough to share the community veteran peer support printout with me. I'm going to actually read from that a little bit and give some of that information. That number again is 833-463-6453.
Correct.
So for anybody who is sitting there reading it like, what did he say, man? Info IJF? That's what it is, guys. But based on the principle of shared experience, peer support has proven to be an extremely effective way of assisting fellow veterans as they transition back into civilian life and address the many challenges they face along the way, in partnership with the Roosevelt Aurora American Legion Post 84 and the Kane County Veterans Assistance Commission and other area stakeholders. IGAF, Illinois Joining Forces, recruited area veterans to be professionally trained as peer supporters. Grateful to the Dolan Foundation for their partnership and financial support of the program. And the mission of IGF is to bring together public, private, and government stakeholders in collaboration to support currently serving service members, including Guard and Reserve veterans and their family members, regardless of status. The time is 1:25. Tracy Duran is here. Hello, Tracy and Josue, tuning in for a great message. Okay, so what's the length of time and the actual program for the training? Can you guys share that with us, or what it takes to be trained as a peer support? Well,
Claudia can give you her experience as to the content of the training.
Okay.
What we did was we reached out to one of our partners called, by the name of it's the DBSA, the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance. And they're one of the organizations that's sanctioned to provide peer support training for the VA.
Okay.
They have an extensive program, and they do a phenomenal job. What we found, though, that was the VA was looking for people who were in recovery. That was one of the criteria. You had to either be in recovery from a mental illness or a substance abuse issue. because the whole purpose of having these peer support specialists at the VA was to help those who were also in recovery, right? So basically, again, based on the principle of shared experience, that's how they were focused. We went to DBSA and we said, listen, there are a lot of veterans out there who want to serve again and help their fellow veterans, but they don't necessarily have a substance abuse disorder or are in recovery from a mental illness. Can you modify this program so that that requirement isn't necessary, so that we can open up the aperture more and recruit more veterans to be part of this effort? And as I said, it's a model that we hope to be able to take to other communities in the state. But the whole purpose was to give veterans who wanted to serve, as Claudia said, as battle buddies, a little bit more in terms of education and training, so that if they encountered situations that were difficult, just to be able to learn things like listening skills and making sure that you could help with, and Claudia can talk more about the specifics of it, but the whole idea was to prepare them to be peer supporters. That's why they're not called peer specialists. Peer specialist is a very specific term that the VA uses for someone who's trained for recovery.
That's probably got legal implications of it as well.
Absolutely,
Right.
absolutely. So as a volunteer force, they have a very robust training, not only from the DBSA peer training program, but also from the Mental Health First Aid, which is a copyrighted international training program to identify somebody who is in crisis, to know how to escalate it and so forth. So that was the equipment, that was the training that was involved. And now we're in the recruitment process of veterans, which is why we love being on your show. If any veteran is within earshot, we want to make sure that they know that they can reach out to us and get them connected. But I'll let Claudia talk a little bit about how the training went.
Well, I mean, it was, I think to wrap it up, I think the training for us was a 4-day intensive workshop. And I think they tried to, how many weeks did they try to squeeze into 4 days?
Well, the original program is 3 weeks.
So yeah, it's, yeah. And they squeeze it all into 4 days. So it's intense. It was robust. It was really good. And, you know, it's in the name, we're peer supporters, veteran community, veteran peer supporters. You know, we're not psychologists, psychiatrists, we're not doctors, we're not, you know, we're there to just guide our battle buddies, right? You know, they really train us on making sure that we're not giving advice, you know, having people change their medications, or, you know, we're not their doctors. But we are the people that can hold their hand and guide them in a direction we think might be good for them. So they kind of give us training on how to identify maybe mental illness or symptoms or issues, how to communicate effectively, how to make sure we're listening and asking some of the right questions. But we're there really truly to just facilitate and help, you know, our buddies out there to get the resources that they need, that they might not even know they need. Right. You know, if we're talking to someone and maybe they've called in because, you know, a recent issue we had, they were behind on rent and they had a lot of other issues going on as a veteran, you know, active listening skills, you might find out there's more things they need. They might need contact with a VSO in their county to help file a claim for a service-connected disability. They might not know about, you know, getting a tax exemption on the home they own through Illinois because of the awesome benefits that the state gives to our veterans for home ownership. Or they might not know that they have access to an urgent care for free through the Mission Act, and they can just walk into a Minute Clinic if they have an ear infection. Or maybe they don't know how to get integrated into the VA and get a veteran card. And so I think just knowing how to communicate and ask the right questions and identify if there's other issues above and beyond that. I think DBSA really taught us to just make sure that we were following a best practice and strict guideline into helping other veterans out. And so the training was multifaceted, but it was condensed. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I'm even really describing it
No, I
the
think-
best way, but
I think it's exactly what you described, because there is so much out there. One of the things that we've also recognized, Curtis, is that and the example that you were bringing up, we had a veteran that contacted Illinois Joining Forces. We were actually put in touch with her by the AVAC, the Aurora Veterans Advisory Council. I attended that meeting recently, and they mentioned that this mother of two with a newborn was behind on her rent.
Yeah.
And she's working full time, had a difficult experience, and just fell behind. Had we not been in the community, had we not been in touch with AVAC, we wouldn't have known about it. And so we were able to connect her to one of our national partners that paid the rent, her back rent. But in doing so, we also don't want to intrude, right?
Right.
We know that she needs the additional support, and we're hoping, and Claudia and Michael from our Care Coordination Center are working to kind of nudge her along to say, this isn't the end. The rent was paid, right? But there's a lot of other things that we can help you address. Please reach out, right?
Right.
So it's difficult to ask once. It's even more difficult to ask again.
Right.
So again, for anybody who's listening, they can call our Care Coordination Center anytime for any reason. And if they do so, and we're able to get them squared away, they're free to go, right?
Right.
They can go on with their lives. If something comes up in the future and they need our assistance again, they needn't hesitate to ask, right? So that's why we're here, to be able to do that. And it gives people the sense that, hey, I do have a net. I have someone that I can reach out to.
Right.
And it makes a difference.
yeah, you touched on something that resonated with me a lot as veterans. We don't like to ask for help.
No,
and
we
I
got
think,
this.
yeah, we got
Yeah.
this,
Yeah,
right?
I'll be all right.
The stigma that
Right.
you're strong enough, you
Right.
can, and it a lot of pride gets in the way,
Yeah.
and it takes a lot of strength to ask for help, and I think to your point,
Yeah.
that's a big obstacle.
It really
that
is.
You don't want to say that there's something wrong with you, or that
Yeah.
you don't need that help. The pride, or I've heard a lot of veterans say, I don't need the government to help me out, or they don't want a handout.
Right.
They want to earn it and work for it. But I think what our veterans don't realize is that they did earn it. These are benefits there for them for a reason,
Right.
because they paid the ultimate sacrifice. And I don't think that we really look at it that
Right.
way ultimately.
Yeah, I don't think society has traditionally either.
No.
I think it's
yeah.
a combination of members of the veteran community not wanting to reach out, and society not even thinking that we will. Not expecting us to, or not. Which actually, I didn't mean to cut you off, because
No.
I did have a. So
No
what I was going to ask was, in both of your shared experiences and collective time doing this, what are the PTSD has been an issue. I suspect, have other issues started to become more prevalent? Like, has drug use become more prevalent? Are there issues that are being discovered now and are coming to light now that were not traditionally associated with the veteran community, or are you guys seeing pretty much the typical issues, and have they not changed?
I think that the issues are similar, but I think there's better insight now.
Okay.
Right? And I told the story about my dad serving in World War II as a cargo pilot in the South Pacific, right? So when he came back, and a lot of people came back, there was a culture, a community that welcomed them back, because, as we were talking about earlier, the whole country was involved in the war effort, right? There were victory gardens, which Marie Wilkinson has, right? That victory garden is symbolic of what was being done at the time, where the President Roosevelt asked people to create or grow their own victory gardens so that the produce could be used for the troops, right? I remember my mom and dad talking about they had to save butter and tinfoil and all kinds of different things, right? That collective experience assisted those veterans who did come back because they were welcomed back, right, into a pretty well-heeled community. And that's part of what we're seeing is sometimes it's not the veteran, it's the community. The community just doesn't have the traditions and the ceremonies and the rituals that we once did in welcoming back. The Native Americans have a phenomenal tradition of welcoming back warriors after a battle. They would not let them return to the village immediately after a battle. They'd be taken out into the fields, they'd hunt, they'd fish, they'd sit around the campfire, the elders would tell stories, and at a point certain, they would be welcomed back into the village. It gave them an opportunity to literally take off their war paint and war feathers, be welcomed back into the community with ceremony and ritual as father, brother, uncle. That tradition we don't have. We think we're connected today because we have Facebook and we have all this electronic connections and so forth. We're more fractured than we ever were.
I agree with that. Those are not, those are digital connections that have just been made artificial connections.
Yeah. So when it comes to things like PTSD and alcohol or drug use, we look at it, and it's the literature and the research backs it up that they're self-medicating, from the invisible wounds of war, right? So it's incumbent upon us as a society to offer them a menu of options that they can choose to heal from those invisible wounds so they're not relegated to just drugs or alcohol. I think, though, that what we're finding is that sometimes our remedy is more drugs, right?
Yeah.
Because there's something wrong with them, right? And we know that it's a wound, and drugs aren't the answer for every wound. So we're trying desperately to make sure that we have as many options for the veterans as possible. If they want equine therapy, massage therapy, acupuncture or massage therapy, all of these proven techniques to be able to heal from the wounds of war have been used for thousands of years. When we invented medications, we threw those out and said, here, there's a pill for every ill. So opening up the aperture again to make sure that we give the veteran the choice as to what's best for him or her is the best approach. I still say, though, that peer support has been and always will be one of the number one efforts to give people that opportunity to heal because of that principle of shared experience.
The principle of shared experience. The time is 1:38 p.m. I know it's a special edition, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Aurora. That's what we're calling this one today. We've got great guests of Illinois joining forces with us. I'm going to just take a brief break and pause and read our American Legion band information that's coming up for this weekend. And as we've been mentioning, Post 84, they've got some great stuff going on. So Post 84 is going to be teaming up with the American Legion Band for a free concert tomorrow at 3 p.m. at West Aurora High School. Do I need to give you the address of West Aurora High School? I don't think I do. I know we have a lot of Black Hawks and Tomcats, and you know where each other are located. So the band has been in rehearsal during the winter and spring to prepare for its 85th season. How about that? The concert's being hosted by the Roosevelt Aurora Legion Post 84 to honor service members currently serving around the globe, and the band will perform patriotic standards as well as other pieces. Quote from Commander Mike Ekberg. In 1937, a pair of World War I veterans from Roosevelt Aurora Post 84 formed a cadet band comprising of high school musicians. It is our honor to host the band's first concert post-pandemic and bring back the patriotic songs that everyone in the community will enjoy. Close quote. The band performs primarily during the summer months in concerts and parades around the Fox Valley. The time is 1:40. Okay. Thank you for tuning in, all of you great people. Glennis Foster, hello there. Look at all these great folks. You guys got jobs? What are you doing on that? Does your boss know what you're doing right now? Hopefully your boss is watching the show too. Okay. Can you guys, I know that we're dealing with individuals, and those are the subjects who are taking part in this and who are benefiting from this. Without giving the information of, information that we can't, do you have any success stories that you'd like to share? If we can't speak about them Our listeners totally understand that too.
That's okay.
But have there been any success stories?
Well, we're on our way to one.
Okay.
Right? So
all right.
since this is a new program, and we're still pushing the word out that it's available, and then hopefully from your show more people will take advantage of it. But we talked about earlier about being able to get a single mom rent, right? And that's changed her life. She was facing eviction. So when the folks from AVAC mentioned it to us, it was imminent, right? And they didn't have the resources to take her all the way. They provided a small donation to pay for food, tide her over, and so forth. But it was being piecemealed together. So we're being sensitive to those folks that we encounter because we don't want to push it on them, right? We want to make sure that they reach out, and that so more to follow on that story, and we think it's going to be a good one. We think it'll give us an opportunity to show that when you do get connected, Illinois Joining Forces through our Care Coordination Center has been able to take her a certain way. Okay. We're hoping that as she engages more and more, that our team, Claudia in particular, can help get her the rest of the way. So we've seen it work. We think that it's best that those who are peers have the training, which is why we went through that, or Claudia and team went through, a pretty intensive 4-day program. So we're looking forward to good results.
Claudia, I got a question for you. When Norman Peterson says, a call to shoulder is another great resource for veterans. That is a local resource. And good afternoon to our friend Greg Zilioli with that. Claudia, what was the most revealing and formulative experience for you in your years of service with the Army? That was a kind of long-winded statement, a long-winded question on my part, and I totally apologize.
Well,
and just for clarification, I asked because as a battle buddy, I'd like to kind of get a sense, if at all possible, of what you're bringing to that person. I understand it, but
I think I would describe my experience as probably the best, worst experience of my life.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that there were a lot of blessings and gifts that I received from my service in the military. And then there were some things that I will probably carry with me and maybe haunt me for the rest of my life. I like to say that, not too dramatically, but you can't unsee anything that you see in the military. I think that it made me really appreciate that we live in America and people don't realize how lucky we are. Mm-hmm. I've been to very devastating areas of the world where there wasn't a democracy or freedom or flushing toilets or plumbing or electricity or public works, running water. Some of the most interesting experiences I had were raw. Not showering for days on end and not having electricity or plumbing, drinking hot water off a pallet and not seeing an ice cube for over a month or two.
Right.
I kind of joke about this a lot, but when I first came home from Iraq, I think I flushed my toilet 20 times when I got home because I just thought that was the most amazing thing in the world.
Right. Like, wow, have this.
I'm not burning my,
Mm-hmm.
anyway. I don't know what I can say on this show or not. Yeah. I was going to say something else. And, it wasn't a porta-john. We weren't rationing water to brush our teeth. If you did brush your teeth, we didn't have hand sanitizer. We didn't get mail for over 2 months when we first got over there. We didn't have cell phones at that time. We weren't in communication with our families. They didn't know what to believe on the news or not. And so it's a loaded question because there was those experiences and then there was the experiences within your ranks.
Right.
And, I think we talked about, unfortunately, there were so many good things to remember, and because you're trying to not remember all the bad things,
Right.
you just try to not remember any of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I went a long time trying to forget about all of it. Just try not to, just put it to the side and move on.
Right.
But my body and mind and soul was not going to let me forget it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most revealing and humbling things I think I've been through is that as much as I wanted to forget things, my body and soul was not going to let me forget.
Right.
So things started to come up. And for me, what's been humbling is that, I came from a family where mental health was kind of a stigma, or anxiety, panic attacks, and things like that. And I think I went through an adjustment period where things started to come up for me,
Right.
memories, healing, that
yeah.
need. And anyway, I guess, that's been real humbling. And, you talk about the invisible wound. And so often, I avoid speaking about my military experiences for different reasons, or one way or the other. But, usually when people kind of learn a little bit about my story, or they think, oh, you're a veteran, they look at me, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. I'm not missing any legs. I'm not missing an arm. I don't
Right.
have any scars that are visible to the naked eye. And it's hard to find people that understand, unless you go maybe to a VFW or you have other veterans that you can talk to. But for me, as a reservist, even, you're
Right.
even more displaced in your community. But a
course.
lot of active duty people too, once they get off of active duty, they go back to their communities, and you don't have that person to relate to.
Right.
So I don't know if that answered.
No, it did.
Your
No,
question a little
it
bit.
totally did. And again, it's veterans helping veterans, so that is something that a veteran can relate to. Also, though, too, I think that it's the individual's story that like makes them, and that's one of the unforeseen wounds, or like that'll never heal, but that kind of peppers us. Like I share with you guys, like I
yeah.
did not have a good relationship with I had to leave America to really realize, like, wait a minute, you know what? Maybe I'm doing this wrong, right?
Yeah.
Maybe my dad does know more than I do at age 18. Maybe my mom's not such a jerk. And when you get over, humbling was the best word that you used, because
Yeah.
I've been consistently like humbled. I came home to Illinois and getting a new place together and your first and last month's rent and your security deposit, I was sleeping on my mom's couch. Grown man and a veteran. That was humbling.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right back where you started.
Right. Well, the humbling is the right word that you used. The word that you used was story.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one of the things that isn't happening. It's not happening enough. So when I mentioned that I went through my dad's footlocker, right? And I didn't understand. If somebody would ask me, did you grow up in a military household? I would have said no, right?
Right.
I didn't grow up there weren't ribbons, there weren't memorabilia. It was all packed away into this wooden footlocker. But after I started working with veterans, and some pretty severe cases of PTSD, traumatic brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, which is how I got into this game in the first place, was through an organization that we were a part of to help heal those wounds. And became involved with IJF, became a staff member in 2016. But prior to that, we were working with folks that were in pretty bad shape. And what we found was that a lot of the invisible wounds were also hidden wounds, buried wounds, right? So when I look back on my experience growing up, having worked with veterans, I now recognize the signs
Right.
from my dad and from my uncle, right? I recognize the signs of the horrendous things they saw, some of the things they may have done, but they never talked about it. And so Claudia and I had a conversation about a week ago or so where we came up with this concept, because it's important that those stories be told. And it's important for us as civilians and for the country to hear those stories more and more so that we never forget.
Right.
So, and there's something healing in telling those stories. And we came up with the term unpacking your footlocker or unpacking your duffel bag.
I like that.
You know, and it's not something that you can command of somebody or demand of them, and you certainly can't snap your fingers and say, okay, it's time for you to unpack your duffel bag or unpack your footlocker. When we unpacked my dad's footlocker, we actually began to hear his story, a story that I had no connection to.
Right.
In fact, I kid with my brothers and sisters. I've got four sisters and a brother. There's 6 of us growing up. And I kid with them and said, I didn't know those 2 people. I had no idea who they were.
Right.
No idea what his experience was in the military. I had no idea what my mom's experience was while he was in the military. I had no idea what their lives were like because they never opened up the footlocker.
Right.
They never told those stories. So, Claudia, if you would, you had an experience with your daughter, right?
Well, and
So
I
share
think,
that.
yeah, and I think when we were having this conversation, I'm sure his parents was coming from a place of thinking they were protecting you from it, because
Yeah.
because we think that you're not going to be able to handle our story.
Right.
You know, maybe we can't handle our own story.
Yeah.
And it's tough to say out loud, or there's that timing. You talked about, hey, you know, I've been out of the military since 2004, and I've been in my own journey, recovery, however we want to talk about that. And I've had my enlightenments and epiphanies and moments throughout the last 10 years. But my daughter and I, and this is actually right around the time, right before I met Jim, which is really kind of eerie, but I had a friend of mine, a neighbor, asked me to do a presentation about veterans and how we give back to America. And it was for the Boy Scouts. They were doing something on service or selfless service, some badge they were trying to earn.
Right.
And she asked me to come speak around Veterans Day, the Boy Scouts. And she was a good friend of mine, and I couldn't say no, and I was afraid to say yes, okay? But I said yes. And I thought, okay. And I remember I got in my garage and I drug out a duffel bag and a footlocker that's moved around with me since I got out of the military. It still has the sand on it. It still has the last address where I was at in Iraq, and it's peeling and it's broken. It looks like it's in bad shape. And I opened it up and I started to unpack it and take things out. And it was anything from, I don't know why I still had it,
Right.
to, ooh, I totally forgot I had that.
Right.
And I decided to put together a memory board. And in this process, my daughter kind of came in and was like, hey, Mom, what's this? And at the time, my daughter was 11 and she's a 6th grader. And of course, you know, kids, they think this stuff is cool, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, they're like, hey, what's this? Oh, Mom's
My mom
old
was a
boot camp.
soldier.
Yeah, wow, you're in your uniform. And what's this? And,
Yep.
you know, in her excitement, it was my heaviness. And how do I start introducing her? And she knows I was in the military. She knows kind of broad strokes. She knows the safe things or stories. But you know, here came like a pack of cigarettes that was still wrapped in its box, and it was called Virginia. It was a generic cigarette that we had wrapped that we would give to the prisoners. So part of my mission when I was in Iraq is we did EPW camps, enemy prisoner of war camps, and so we guarded the prisoners.
Right.
And so here comes this pack of cigarettes. So I talked to Kylie about, well, you know, when I was in the service, I did this. Oh, wow. And the story starts to come out, and that goes near the memory board, and I start to put up patches. And I had stickers that, you know, the propaganda stickers from PSYOPs units that were passing out, you know, most wanted for Saddam
Right.
Hussein, but it was in Arabic. And so there were
club,
bumper
the
stickers.
King of Club got the card.
I had a
Yeah.
deck of cards,
Big deck cards,
unopened, the top 50, the most wanted,
Mhm.
Iraqi, you know,
Yeah.
and I said, don't ever open these. These might be worth something one day. And then here came an MRE. Don't ask me where it came from, you know. And so as we started to unpack this footlocker, it opened up a dialogue with my daughter. And she goes, Mom, is that why you have nightmares? I cry. I said,
okay.
well, you know, so she is, I think our children know so much more than we give them credit for.
Mhm.
And I think it was liberating for her to be able to become part of that dialogue, and almost freeing for her too, because, you know, we could be in the car and she said, Mom, your breathing's changing again, right? Because you know, things trigger you. And for those of that people that don't understand, you know, maybe PTSD and things like that. You know, that's probably another topic to get into, but she knows when my breathing changes. She knows when I kind of stare or get distracted. You know, to her, she's seeing something.
Right.
You know, it's not all the time or anything like that. Or if we go to a Blackhawks game and they start beating the drum real hard and it's a sudden boom, boom, you know, and, you know, there's, you know, or if I have to excuse myself because a restaurant's too crowded or I can't get, you know, there's certain things that I'm still working through that might be there forever, but she notices, you know, it affects your family. And so I think for her, she was at an age where when we had this, we put this memory board together and I did a present. She came with me and she helped be my sidekick to presenting to the Boy Scouts. And she felt really good that she knew what camel spiders were and scorpions. And we made it fun. It was obviously age appropriate, of course. But for me, as much as I was talking about some of those benign, fun stories to the children, for me, what people have to understand is it's a freight train. That first train coming down the tracks, it might be a memory, but it's attached to all the good and bad memories.
Absolutely.
So once that train starts coming through, for me, you know, I have to start grounding myself because it's, you know, I might be talking about something that's small and a camel spider in the sand or a hot day, but there's other things that kind of come in behind it. And when you try to put those brakes on a freight train, you know how long it takes to stop.
Right.
It doesn't just stop. It keeps going and you're trying to put the brakes on. So that was an interesting moment. I think it was I went into my duffel bag and I think I had taken off my desert uniform, literally just peeled it off my skin and put it at the bottom of that duffel bag the way it was on. I mean, my belt was still on, my IDs were still in there. And I pulled it out and I said, you know what? It's time for me to put this to rest in a dignified way.
Right.
And I washed that uniform and I hung it up. I went and did the presentation at the Boy Scouts, and then I got an email that Illinois Joining Forces was looking for some volunteers. So
Yeah, it was.
We can hit the claps for that. We got a clap button for that. Appreciate it.
When we had that conversation, when Claudia first shared that story with me, I shared a similar story about opening up the dad's kitchen. So for those that are out there listening and for their family members, if you've served in the military, consider unpacking, right? Consider unpacking the duffel bag, consider unpacking your foot locker, but do it with someone. Do it with a family member, because the gift that you gave your daughter, because she felt the things that you were going through, right? Whether it was nightmares or anxiety or just...
she knew something was going on. Right. She knew there was something.
Right. And I think the gift you gave her was understanding, right? And I experienced those things with my dad growing up, but I didn't gain any understanding until I unpacked his foot locker.
Right.
And then I began to know and recognize that I didn't know that man. No, I didn't know his relationship with my mom. So those stories are important, and they're important to share. And I'm not suggesting that we force everybody just to go out and, you know, tell their story, but find someone you trust that you can unpack with. And it doesn't have to be the term we used was unpacking your foot locker or your duffel bag, right?
Yeah.
So unpacking is a continuous effort, right? It's not unpack your duffel bag or unpack your foot locker. It's unpacking it, right? And it may take a while. It may never get done, but that unpacking, that sense of understanding that you give to your loved ones about your experience is precious to them, because they've already felt the remnants of it. They already understand the difficulty that you went through, or they don't understand the difficulty you went through, but they have felt it, right? This exercise of unpacking at your pace gives them that understanding, and it's healing both ways, right?
Oh, sure. You know, it's been a long time since I've been in the military, but he was making me think about the load plans we used to come up with before deployments. You know, you have a load plan.
Right.
You knew exactly what was going in your A bag, your B bag, your C bag, your duffel bags. And then you knew exactly how you're going to load the Humvee. You knew exactly how you're going to load the Connex because we had diagrams after diagrams, and we knew where everything was at.
Right.
Right.
It's never
Remember
a mystery.
And we probably did it 10 times. Sometimes we thought that's all we were doing, packing and loading. And we were really good at load plans, really good at just that.
Mm-hmm.
But something got missed when we came home, because you've said it best. It's like we're really good at deploying. We're really good at getting our soldiers there. We're good at the training. We're good at, but when we get home, there's no exit strategy.
Right.
And no one taught me how to unpack all this. It's kind of, I know we're giving this something tangible to work off, but I think, I wish I had had the skills and the resources I have now then. Because as we all know, if the longer you wait to get adjustment counseling, or the longer you wait to address something you don't even know you need to address, the harder it is as time goes on. So that's what I really love about Illinois joining forces, and I hope we can reach more veterans faster before it ends up so to the point where it's always a crisis. That's a lot of veterans, they'll end up at the VA at some point, maybe because of a crisis, but I'm also hoping this is a proactive way to reach out to our veterans.
Yeah, and I think that's, we use the term upstream, right, to try and get upstream of a crisis, right? So the woman that we were talking about, the single mom, she was in crisis, right?
Right.
And we were able to avert further crisis, but we wish we had been in contact with her earlier on, before she got deeply behind on her rent, because that caused a tremendous amount of stress for her. So can't do this commercial too often, Curtis. 833-463-6453.
Jim, nobody does it like you, brother.
Thank
Nobody
you.
does it like you.
Thank you, sir. So 833-INFO-IJF, if you don't remember it, but 833-463-6453. That's the number to call.
The time is 2:03. I know that you have an engagement now. Just to end things, so the show ends on a positive note. So you guys are gonna get the word of the day. But what's the website? Just so I can reiterate that to folks too.
www.illinoisjoiningforces, all one word, all spelled out, illinoisjoiningforces.org.
Got it. Right. We'll put that in the chat. Make a post about that after the show for anyone who has information.
Great.
Or needs information. The show ends on a positive note. What is your message today for not only the listeners and veterans of Aurora, but for the state?
Miriam.
You.
Well, first of all, since it is Memorial Day weekend, we want to honor those who gave the ultimate sacrifice, and to make sure that it's not just a weekend of barbecues and hot dogs, but we take a moment to really remember the ultimate sacrifice that was paid throughout our history, right? The other is to understand that there are people out there that want to help those who have sacrificed. They may not have paid the ultimate sacrifice, but they certainly served. They're worthy of recognition, they're worthy of support, and as Lincoln said, it's on us to care for him who shall have borne the battle.
Well said, sir. Claudia?
I think, first of all, thank you to all my brothers and sisters who have served, and to those who made the ultimate sacrifice, but that's who it's really for this weekend, is for those who gave the ultimate sacrifice that can't be sitting where I'm sitting right now. And to those families who endured that loss. I feel very lucky to live in America. And I guess the message I would like to give to my fellow veterans is that, it's not as scary as you think to reach out for help, but, it's easier said than done, because I've been there, and I just hope that if they're listening, if there's a veteran out there listening, or if someone knows a veteran, that can be the biggest influence, really, the people that know veterans that need help. I really hope that they can share this information. Just the phone number. It's just one phone call. It's actually not complicated at all. There's no dial 1, dial 2. You go straight to the care coordinator and you talk to a live person, and just give it a shot if you need something, if you need a little help. That's what I hope. that they give it a shot.
We hope that anyone who has any questions can reach out. They can reach out to us if they have questions, and we'll put them in contact with you folks. If you're gonna say something, Jim.
Sure. I was just going to thank you. Thank you for the
Yeah.
opportunity to speak to your followers, your listeners, whatever you guys do on that Facebook of yours.
Right.
But thank you very much for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. As for the people who've been listening to our show from the beginning of time, know this show will always stand up for our veterans, our seniors, and our folks in the community who need help, period. No matter who they are or no matter what kind of help you need. Thank you guys for tuning in to this special edition. I want to say thank you once again to our friends Claudia and Jim of Illinois Joining Forces. If you have questions, reach out to us and we will put you in contact with them. God bless America and have a blessed and safe weekend. Take care of yourself and each other.